If you look at a typical ABL window, you see the window consists of the window border, menu bar, message area, status area, and the actual client area, which is the area where you design your frames. And only the client area will be embedded. So all the other pieces of the window will actually be lost, and you need to provide a replacement when they are relevant for your application. So this is the client area, which makes it over to the embedded window. And this is actually an image which you will never see like this in the Visual Designer. I've just taken the image of the window, placed it in the Visual Designer so that you get an impression how it would look like. In real world, the embedding only happens at runtime, so you need to start the application to see the total result of the embedded ABL windows. From a coding perspective, it's relatively easy to embed an ABL window. You just need to create a new instance of the window container object and make the window container object known about the handle of the ABL window which you want to embed. There's only one restriction: the window may not yet be realized. So that means you shouldn't have used the hidden or visible attributes yet and methods like load icon. Once you've touched these methods or attributes, it's too late to start the embedding. When we do this in projects, we usually make all the code modifications on the existing progress windows in include files. And we decorate them with compile time checks to make sure that the code remains compatible with previous progress releases. We dynamically render .NET controls from the existing ABL widgets. So we traverse the menu tree and build whatever .NET control we want to use as a replacement. And then together with the partner, we look at the application, we look at their windows. If we find additional ABL widgets that should be substituted with .NET controls. That might be tab folders, it might be browsers, other things that have a large effect and don't cost too much time. Another recommended practice is we keep most of the UI logic in the progress window, in the progress.w file. So 2 examples. When the user will close that window, he will actually not close the ABL window anymore because it has no border, it has no red X in the top right corner. He will close the .NET form, and we always cancel the closing of the .NET form, and we apply the window close to the window so that the window close trigger will be executed. Just in case the window close trigger makes a decision that the window should not yet be closed because the user is still in update mode or anything like that. Same with choosing menu items. We always apply the choose to the ABL widget so that the trigger code in that ABL widget is executed. 2 real-world samples I'm going to show you right now. One is from Update TextWare. They're a German progress partner developing an ERP package for the textile industry. Their application is based on an own framework developed around version 7, version 8. They haven't added many version 9 features to the application. And here, besides improving the UI, we had another challenge. Their application was built in a way that the user can only start one screen at a time. That was because of their transaction handling. When they start updating a record, they start a transaction, they do lock the record. And that is something which we couldn't change with little time, so we had to find a different approach. And the approach we've chosen was that we enhance the toolbars so that the toolbars communicate with each other. And if one toolbar initiates an update mode, he communicates with all the other toolbars running so that these windows are in read-only mode. So that gives the user added value because the user now can launch more than one window at the same time, and he is only allowed to do modifications in one at a time, but that's an acceptable rule for the users. What you see here is one of their windows in design time. You see they have something like a toolbar in the top and another toolbar on the left-hand side with quick access buttons. And the main contents of the window typically consist of a browser in the bottom and fields to show details and to edit data above the browser. When we embedded this, we have integrated the toolbar buttons and the quick access buttons to the infogistic controls. We have used an Explorer bar on the right-hand side for the quick access buttons, so that it is a much more natural .NET control that users are used to today. The second real-world example for today is from Shuttleworth in the UK. Shuttleworth is building a huge ERP system for the printing industry. Their application is based on a version 8 style framework, a little bit ADM1-like, but not really ADM1. And they had a clear vision of how the application should look like after the UI modernization. They wanted to receive an Outlook look and feel. For them, that means that the list of records should always be remaining in the main application window. And if you start opening a record in detail view or for editing, that should appear as a separate window that the user actually could also place on a different screen or so. We were able to make the majority of the changes in the existing framework. That means we only had to do very, very few changes on a screen-by-screen basis. This is how their main menu and their selection screens did look prior to the modernization. The main menu also consists some toolbar buttons which actually control the browse window in the bottom. The browse window is built from some filter fields and an actual browse widget. In the modernization, we have more or less rewritten the main menu screen using an Intragistics tabbed MDI manager and Intragistics ribbon. And the selection window is now embedded as an MDI child. And the selection window actually still features the old Progress widgets in an ABL frame, which were used for filtering. And we have replaced the browser to actually show the search result using an Intragistics grid. We didn't want to rewrite the frame in the top for various reasons. First of all, there are around about 1,700 screens of this kind, and many of the widgets on these filter screens do have event handlers that actually modify the query, and it would have been a quite complex task. And I'm pretty sure if I wouldn't have pointed you to the fact that that's still an old classic ABL GUI frame, you probably wouldn't have noticed it. It's not required to change that. The data windows from Shuttleworth are quite complex as well. Data windows sometimes have two nested tab folders, like in this example, and a huge number of input fields. The modernized version of this uses an Intragistics tab folder, or in this case two Intragistics tab folders as a replacement, and a ribbon in the top. And we've also changed the colors of the frame, the background color, to make it look much more streamlined. But this is still an ABL frame, and in all these tab pages, there's still ABL frames, which we are using in the context of the .NET GUI. So what is the feedback that I receive from partners that we do projects like this with? And by the way, we've done this with more than 10 partners so far, these techniques. Partners feel that this takes away a lot of time pressure. They receive a recognizable UI improvement with very little effort. And it also reduces the implementation risk. We're not touching the business logic. We are not adding extra architectural layers. So the testing of this is really reduced to the actual UI functions that we've modified, not to the core business logic. The maintenance of this is simplified. We're still working with the same code base. Developers actually may continue to use the app builder to maintain the existing applications. This means that in a team with, let's say, 10 developers, it would be enough if 2 or 3 would know about the .NET UI, and the others remain productive in the tools that they're using since ever. And also for the end user, it means the end user only has to do very, very little training. The end user will recognize the majority of the screens. And I've received a feedback from one partner where a customer said, well, if your new version of the application looks like a completely new application and I need to train all my users, we could as well look at the market and look out for competitors' application. When you're doing these things, don't underestimate the power of new images and icons. I've seen many applications where the images from the Progress Data Dictionary have been used within the application to, well, indicate reports or whatever. If you make UI improvements and spend a lot of time there, don't ruin the result by using these old icons. Use modern icons. They usually don't cost a lot of money, and it's worth every penny of that. A few words about new development using GUI for .NET. There may be two strategies with new development. One may that you want to rewrite one or two, just a few individual screens where the capabilities of the progress, which is really are at its end, something like a scheduler screen where you use progress browsers or drill down functionality in progress browsers. The other strategy is that your goal is to rewrite the whole client to really leverage everything the infogistic controls can offer. In both cases, this new development of the UI should go along with an architectural revision of the application. What it means actually depends on a lot on your application and also the ability to reuse existing code. But very often this UI modernization is a driver for the new architecture. I've seen, for instance, much more demand in the Pro data set since the new user interface is available since it has been released. When doing projects like this, don't underestimate the time required to build good reusable components. It requires at least basic understanding about object-oriented development, so you need to be aware of these concepts like types and interfaces, casting, strong typing, which can be really supporting, but it can also be a curse. If you want to build a framework and even want to integrate that framework very well into the Visual Designer, please be prepared that this requires very good OO design skills. When you're doing these things, extending some key .NET classes is a key to success. That's the best way to achieve reusable functionality. But don't inherit everything just because you can. For instance, I've seen many developers that said, well, now let's inherit every .NET control, let's inherit every button, every text box, every checkbox, just because we can and maybe we need it at some point in time. First of all, inheriting from often used .NET controls has a performance penalty, and as a performance penalty, and in the end, you probably will never need it. The typical functions why you want to inherit from a text box might be things like translation, security, and probably applying these functionality on a container level, which might be a user control or the actual form, is a better idea anyway. And there are controls which you will never be able to extend. If you're using an infogistic grid, you could extend the infogistic grid, but you will not be able to extend the class used for the browse column because that's created by a factory in the grid, and the grid will always create its standard browse column class. When you are starting developing GUI for .NET, you're actually becoming a .NET developer. You're becoming a .NET developer in Progress Tools, but still you're becoming a .NET developer. So get used to .NET community resources. The Microsoft Developer Network is a great resource, great forum, and great reference. Infogistics forum, Google. If you Google .NET questions, you'll find lots of good answers. Every .NET developer certainly will have at the point in time his favorite .NET community site, minus the codeproject.com, to find answers to how-to questions. And you should get used to translating C# code or VB.NET code to ABL code. It's not that hard. Once you know the basic syntax translation, it's actually very easy. You may consider to hire a .NET developer or a mentor to get you above the stage of well, trying to find the very basic step with .NET controls. But you should tell them that application architectures in progress look a bit different, and that the app server actually is not something like a SQL server with stored procedures.